Red Bull has been dominating the grid for the past 2 seasons and crushing its rivals in almost every race. Some say it's due to luck because how on earth did they design a car so perfectly, despite the complicated FIA regulations? While some say they've been working so hard for the past few years and it's only fair that they have a moment to shine. Nonetheless, we all know how the FIA feels about a team dominating for so long, especially when there are no title contenders beside the winning team. Just recently they introduced some new rules for the 2025 season and even made some upgrades to the 2026 season, and it might have something to do with Red Bull's dominance. So what are the likely effects of this rule change? Red Bull is set to win their 3rd season in a row, and it's all due to the combination of skilled drivers and impressive cars. However, the beginning of their winning spree was a little rule change that had been ordered in the 2021 season. We all know how Mercedes dominated the grid from 2014 to 2020, winning both the Drivers' Championship and the Constructors' Championship titles. Although during Mercedes' reign, other teams were competitive, one couldn't predict who would win the race, and that made races more exciting. Nonetheless, the FIA weren't too pleased by Mercedes' dominance and decided to do something about it. In the 2021 season, the FIA suddenly announced a suite of floor rule changes that shifted the balance of power away from low-rake cars like Mercedes to higher-rake cars such as Red Bull. Once that change was made, Red Bull became more competitive and the two teams began fighting neck to neck for the Drivers' Championship title. Although the FIA said the changes were due to safety reasons, we can see that they had prevented Mercedes from winning by all means. The initial excuse the FIA gave for the rule change was that Pirelli had not been able to develop new tyres due to COVID restrictions, and the cars were getting quicker, so the rule change was to trim the downforce. When that didn't work and Hamilton was about to win his 8th championship title, the win was taken away from him at the last minute due to a rule-breaking restart after a late safety car. Red Bull, on the other hand, was the other major title contender, so the win had fallen into their palms. Luckily for them, when the 2022 regulations were introduced, they had been able to design a perfect car. The 2022 season was quite a tough one for several teams, as the aerodynamic regulations the FIA introduced were quite complicated. Even Red Bull didn't get it right at first. While other teams were designing zero pods and bathtub pods, the Red Bull's chief technical officer Adrian Newey soon knew just the right thing to do, to turn their car into a beast, and that was the beginning of their dominance on the grid. Now, many F1 fans probably know the Dutch and Austrian anthem of the Red Bull driver, Verstappen, word for word, due to the number of times it's been played. It's a known fact that once a team begins dominating on the grid, especially in a situation like Red Bull, other drivers and teams won't be pleased with it. Several teams began grumbling when Red Bull kept winning race after race while they could barely keep their cars on the track till the end of the race. They began calling for a change in regulations, but the FIA did nothing about it. And some teams decided that it was best to copy Red Bull's design, since if one couldn't beat them, it was best to join them. But Hamilton, who was a victim of the 2021 rule change, couldn't just hide his thoughts after Red Bull chief Christian Horner announced that they've begun working on their 2024 car. He said that it was unfair that some teams could start working on next season's car ahead of others because they've perfected their car for the current season. They, Red Bull, don't have to make any changes to this year's car anymore because they're so far ahead, just cruising 100 points ahead of us. I think the FIA should put a time when everyone is allowed to start development on their next car. So, for example, August 1st. That's when everyone can start, so no one can get an advantage for next year because that sucks. Do you not think that would make more sense? However, the FIA rejected the suggestion, saying that it would be unfair for them to enforce such a rule because a team is doing better. If we go about what's good and bad, we'll open the door. I mean, was it good for Mercedes? Fair enough. Is it Verstappen's time? It is Verstappen's time. It's Red Bull's time. What do we do? Punish the good kid? No. Let's go and make the other teams from being better. We cannot punish people for being better or for trying harder. That is unfair. But there's a chance the FIA got a change of heart when Verstappen won his 3rd season in a row at the 2023 Japanese GP with a few races left. Usually the winner would be known by the end of the season, but Verstappen changed the status quo during the 2022 season, and the F1 Governing Council are not particularly thrilled by it, and it's evident through their recent announcement. The FIA recently announced that there will be some changes in the technical regulations in 2025. In a statement made by the FIA 6 single-seater director Nicholas Tombazis, the changes are due to complaints made by the drivers since the introduction of the new regulations in 2022, and it will be only a few tweaks, not a major overhaul. He also said their decision to make the changes came a little too late. That's why they couldn't order it for the 2024 season. So when describing what the changes would be about, Tombazis said it would be specifically to adjust the wake characteristics of the cars by focusing on the parts that have been causing problems. If we take the 2021 F1 cars based on being 2 lengths from the car in front, they were losing more than 50% of the aero load. With the 2022 single-seaters, there was only a 20% reduction in load, but now we are about 35%. Surely there's been a worsening, and we have identified what we should act on. The FIA representative went ahead to list the parts that were identified. We have identified some parts of the cars to act on, such as the end plate of the front wing, the side of the floor, and the fins inside the wheels. We could lay down somewhat more restrictive rules in this area. Such changes will be implemented in collaboration with the teams. If you'd ask me, this shows that history is repeating itself and the FIA is trying to reduce Red Bull's dominance and make other teams more competitive, and they're going by their usual method of making the changes just to ensure safety. But the reality is that Red Bull might implement these changes and still remain dominant. It's a 50-50 chance, really. However, 2026 might not be the same, as there will be very significant changes in regulations, which would mainly impact the power units. Let's briefly discuss these changes that are expected in 2026. First, the cars will have to use a new carbon-free fuel, a significant step towards the 2030 net zero carbon goal. Also, there will be an increase in electric power, with the MG-UK unit becoming 3 times more powerful than before, which means the electric power would go from 120 kilowatts to 350 kilowatts. Then, there will be no more MG-UH, which is currently used to recover lost energy. The FIA decided it must go due to its complexities and very high cost. It's no surprise that the fuel allowance would also be reduced because with the changes made to the power unit's design, it's expected that the fuel consumed by cars per race would drop by 30%. So there'll be no need for them to get the same allowance as before. So that was a quick summary of the new regulations for the 2026 season. Although the significant step towards making the Earth more sustainable is applauded, many teams, especially Red Bull, are concerned about what it would mean for their team. Red Bull's team principal Horner said he's not too sure the rules would work as they should, and he's called for the F1 to re-evaluate it before it's too late. While Verstappen said he's very dissatisfied with the rules because it means the team with the most powerful engine would be the fastest one on the track. He also mentioned that drivers would have to downshift on straight to recharge the battery, and that would make things complicated. I don't think the FIA is willing to change the regulations until it sees for itself that there are some issues with it. So for now, Red Bull should enjoy its dominance, and other teams should keep working to catch up with them until 2026. When the tables might turn. So what do you think? Let us know in the comment section. Until next time.